Amanda Knight. I will be hosting this webinar. As well, I am the program manager for the Nova Scotia Capital Fund. Joining me today is Allison Lair, Director of Programs, Jean-Francois Paget, or JF, our content creator. So thank you for the information on the additional webinar, JF. Please see our agenda and some of the housekeeping items. I will just recap. We will be recording the webinar and have it posted on the center's website as well as YouTube. Due to the number of participants, we have asked that everybody remain muted during the presentation, and JF will monitor the chat for any questions. We will attempt to have some time at the end of the webinar for live questions, but if we don't get to you, please ask your question in the chat because we will be creating an FAQ to share after the webinar. This is a very high level. We aren't going to get into specific questions unique to your specific organization, but I would encourage you to set up an appointment with me, as I'm happy to discuss further details with you. So the Community Housing Transformation Center, the center provides grants, tools, and services to support community housing stakeholders in their efforts to enact social change, ensure economic sustainability, and bolster growth and efficiency. Additional grant opportunities in Nova Scotia consist of the Nova Scotia Community Housing Growth Fund, which includes funding for planning and pre-development, capacity building, and research and innovation. The center also has funding dedicated to Black-led organizations in Nova Scotia. The center offers additional services, tools, and resources that include the resource inventory, resource kits, and as JF mentioned earlier, the organizational compass, an online self-assessment tool that allows you to identify the organization's strengths and challenges. So the funding stream. The Nova Scotia Community Housing Capital Fund will help remove barriers by providing a one-time equity grant to assist with the acquisition of existing residential rental buildings of 5 units or more to maintain affordable rents. The province of Nova Scotia is leading the way in Canada with investments to slow the loss of affordable housing units, keeping them protected by the community housing sector. The Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing, or DEMA, has contributed $3.524 million to the Capital Fund. The center has developed specialized expertise strengthened by tailor-made IT and administrative tools that provide highly efficient and secure grant allocation and management. This partnership means funds will flow much faster to eligible cooperative and nonprofit housing organizations. This is a high-level view of the grant funding process, and yes, there are many more steps with regards to the Capital Fund than existing grants. So the first step of any grant application is for the applicant to connect with a program manager, that's me, to determine eligibility to the funding stream. Please connect with me before starting an application. Step 2, the applicant completes the eligibility quiz. We will go into more in-depth specifically in the upcoming slide. In step 3, the applicant completes the pre-qualification. This will include uploading documents, providing details about the organization and its current housing portfolio. Step 4, the program manager will work with you to ensure we have all the required information. Once we are satisfied with your application, it will be submitted to the director. Step 5, only once the applicant pre-qualification is approved will the property eligibility section become available through the portal. Step 6, the program manager will review the property with DEMA. The center or DEMA may require further information of the property to finalize an approval. Step 7, DEMA and the center will work to determine the capital stack and the final grant contribution amount. Step 8, the contract is developed and distributed for signatures. This is a legal binding agreement, including conditions of funding, reporting and payment schedules, and amount awarded. And finally, step 9, the center will require a 6-month report after the program date. So I will go into more detail now with regards to the presentation, the applicant eligibility quiz and stage 1. For those of you who have accessed funds in the past, you will follow the same steps. First, you access the portal at my.center.support and click on the Grant Applications tab. For those of you who have not accessed grants in the past, you will need to go to my.center.support and create an account and either connect with your organization if the organization has an account, or create an account for your organization if one doesn't already exist. Once you click on the grant applications, you'll be taken to the main page highlighting all of the available grants. Scroll past the multiple grant offerings that the center has to offer and look for this icon, Nova Scotia Community Housing Capital Fund. This is new. You need to pre-qualify to apply for this fund. Once you click on that box, you'll be taken to the eligibility quiz. Please confirm you have read and qualify for the following. We'll state the obvious with being a nonprofit, housing cooperative, or working in the community housing sector. We're looking for the organization or a parent entity that has 3 years or more experience in acquiring, owning, and operating housing. The decision to use the 3 years was to ensure that the organization has a clear understanding of what owning and operating housing means. This can include unexpected capital costs that weren't caught at the time of purchase, dealing with residential tenancies on tenant issues, defaults in rent, or the multiple other unexpected items that will come up when providing housing. The parent entity may be a larger nonprofit that owns smaller housing organizations or projects. If you feel you may fall under this category, please set up an appointment with me to discuss. Applications for stage 1 need to be submitted by December 15th, 2025. However, don't wait to submit your application. One of the unique features of the Capital Fund is that once the organization is pre-qualified, you don't need to complete this process again, other than updating documents that may have expired. There is a limited amount of funding, and applications will be processed in the order in which they are received, and funding must be dispersed by the end of the program, March 31st, 2026. Once the organization has successfully completed the eligibility quiz, you will be able to move on to the applicant pre-qualification stage 1. Again, for those of you who have applied to the center in the past, this is similar in the layout to other applications. There are sections at the top of the portal that must be completed, but you don't need to complete these sequentially. As you can see, all of the sections with a red X need more information or are incomplete. Once a section is complete, you will see the red X replaced with a green check mark. Press save before moving to another page or exiting. The portal will auto-save every 5 minutes, but just get into the routine of hitting save after you've completed some of the questions. Some of the questions do require more detail. We recommend that you use a Word document for these sections, as the spell check feature is not available in the portal. You can then copy and paste from the Word document into the portal. What you will find under the mission and governance section includes a table that you will need to complete with relevant information of your board of directors. You simply enter the details into this table and save. Include qualifications for the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and chair. There will be a similar table for the organization's leadership team, so people such as your executive director, operations director, property manager, resident manager, anyone directly involved in the operation of the properties. There are some additional required uploads under the mission and governance section, which include bylaws and strategic plan, governance structure, and incorporation documents. If your organization has an acquisition policy, there is a space in this section to upload that. You can drag and drop or click your files to upload them directly. The file name matches once it's been uploaded and will also show in green, so you know you've done it properly. Next, we move on to the property portfolio section. So you click on the property portfolio to open an Excel spreadsheet and save this into your computer or onto your computer. Once you open this, you will see a tab on how to complete the building portfolio. Please refer to this tab when completing this Excel spreadsheet. Some of the required information in this section includes the complete property address, including properties owned outside of Nova Scotia, but please do not include properties that are under development. Are properties currently self-managed or third property managed? What is the condition of the building, as well as the number of vacant or occupied units by unit type? Just a reminder, this is on the organization's current portfolio. This is not about a property that you are considering. When information is accurate, you will see a check mark and all the rows will show complete. Once you finish with the property portfolio, you will move on to the operational capacity and expertise. There are a number of questions in this section, most of which are larger text boxes. So again, it is recommended that you complete this first in a Word document and then copy and paste it into each box. The management strategy section is fairly self-explanatory, and we are looking for what you currently have in place for maintenance, asset management, and tenant engagement. Accessibility doesn't just include persons with disabilities. It can include language and cultural differences, and individuals or groups representing a diverse group of backgrounds. Energy efficiency, what has the organization recently completed? What were the cost savings? What are you looking at for future upgrades? And operating costs. If yours are higher than normal, tell the program manager why. Are you offering services that increase your overall costs? The next section will look back over the organization's previous acquisitions and give an opportunity to provide further details on the following. 1, the properties. How does the organization assess a property as suitable for purchase? 2, was there an acquisition policy uploaded in the mission and governance section? If it wasn't uploaded, you can upload it now or clarify the process that was used. We want to see your evolution and growth throughout this process. So if you did not use an acquisition policy previously, but you realize you should have one, share this information. Number 3, what are the strategic goals for future acquisitions? Are you looking long-term or short-term? And 4, the risks. What risks are inherent to acquisitions, focusing on due diligence, financial safeguarding, and long-term viability? Each organization can be entirely different regarding this criteria, so there really is no right or wrong answer. Moving on to compliance and finance section, we're looking for an upload of the latest 3 audited or reviewed financial statements. The ability to secure financing. So for those familiar with CHCF, the Community Housing Acquisition Program, the information required for the capital fund will position you to potentially qualify for CHCF. Another consideration is, does the organization have other options to secure financing, or will they in the future? And finally, the ability to leverage funds. Does the organization have equity, access for funding from other sources, or does the organization have previous experience leveraging funds? The strategic plan, and there are only 3 sections to go. So this section is also primarily text, so use your Word document. The organizational capacity. Does the organization have a plan? Is it well detailed? Is it tried and tested? Previous growth capacity. How have you handled previous acquisitions? Have you had to increase staffing, built new relationships, or invested in new technology? And new acquisitions. What other considerations has the organization made to be able to handle these new acquisitions? Again, will you need to increase staff? Will you need to build new partnerships and relationships or invest in further technology upgrades? And outside the region. So if the organization is looking to make a purchase outside of their home region, how are they going to manage this? So for example, if your home office is located in HRM and you're looking at purchasing a property in Cape Breton, what other resources are you going to have to put in place to make sure you can properly manage that? Down to the final 2, asset stewardship strategies. What is the organization's overall approach to community housing? How will the organization handle tenant disputes, deliver high-quality services while working within financial restraints, and how will it ensure needed supports are in place? Consider mitigation strategies for underperforming properties. Whenever an organization looks at their portfolio, there's always one property that is not performing to the same level as others. So how does the organization address this when a property is not meeting the same standards as the rest of the portfolio? And what contingency plans are in place if revenues don't cover expenses or if costs rise exponentially? Will the organization be forced to sell the property? I think we can all agree that things have not gotten easier over the past couple of years. And in this section, we want to make sure that it's on your radar for those what if. And by having some of these challenging conversations now, it may open the door to new creative ways of ensuring long-term sustainability. And finally, capital asset planning. So number one, the current portfolio. What is upcoming in the next 3 to 18 months for capital expenditures? Things like new roof, foundation, windows. Your asset priorities. Number two, your asset priorities in the next 3 to 5 years. Are you looking at refinancing a property? Are you looking at selling, purchasing, or possibly taking on a new development? Number three, your organizational approach. The approach to asset management, capital, and maintenance planning. Do you have a process in place? Are you creating one to enable growth? And number four, examples of recent building maintenance or capital expenditure project that you have undertaken in your current portfolio. What worked? What didn't work? What did you learn from, and what will you implement in the future? We move from here to the standard declaration for the center's funding grants. All of these fields are required, and this recognizes that you have the authority and approval from the organization to submit this application. The declaration acknowledges that the center may request further information from the organization, and this may affect the prequalification status. The declaration also acknowledges that the information may be shared in its entirety, and once all of these fields are completed, you will be able to submit your application. However, if the submit button is not activated, it may be due to missing information, which will take me to the next slide. The missing information slide. If you are missing information, you will be notified of what you have missed. You also, if you recall from the beginning of the presentation, there was a slide with the section titles at the top with the red X marks. If you are missing information, they will still show a red X, and once that information has been satisfied, it will change to a green check mark. So we will open it up for some questions on that first section. As JF mentioned, if you wanted to raise your hand and he'll be able to take, I'm putting the control on you, JF, you'll be able to take them off mute. If it's something that I cannot answer, I'm going to defer to Allison for some assistance. But if anyone has any questions right now, or if there's anything in the chat, JF, that you would like to read out, that would be wonderful. We won't handle specific organization questions, but just with regards to the first bit of the information.
Well, at this point, Allison is doing a good job of staying on top of things and answering directly. We do have a question here from Colleen Cameron. I will unmute you. Go right ahead. Oh, you may.
Okay, gotcha. Something I just missed in that presentation through this acquisition fund, it puts you instead in good standing for the CHAP program as well. The CHAP program is still continuing, I take it. And can you explain what that is? Is that stackable funding from CHAP and from the center?
So I will ask for a little bit of help with regards to this, Allison, but CHAP is the funding portion. So they will actually hold the mortgage on the property.
Okay, gotcha. It's not another, I thought there was two things going on here through the Community Housing Trust and through CHAP, and that we could double our money, I guess, but I guess that's not the case. So, okay.
Yeah, so Colleen, hi, nice to see you, by the way.
Yeah.
The CHAP is it's a program that the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing offers.
Yes.
And as Amanda said, it's they hold the first mortgage on it. What was identified previously is that the equity contribution that's required through the CHAP program was a barrier to accessing the CHAP program.
Yep.
So the capital fund that the centre is now managing is in response to that equity gap that was identified as being a barrier for people to access CHAP.
So that means then we can apply through the transition fund acquisition and get funds for our equity portion of the CHAP program. So
Correct.
it is stack. I don't know if that's stackable, but anyways, we have two sources because we went through CHAP before and couldn't do it financially. There just wasn't the money there at all. So this might be helpful.
I also just saw that that Nikki is in the chat. She's on the call as well. So Nikki is she's responsible for the chat program with Dima. So if there are any chat specific questions, then Nikki, if you want to unmute your mic, because you are easily the best person to respond to those.
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys got it right. So essentially, and hi, Colleen. So what happened was we did recognize that was a barrier, even at 95% financing, which we can do under CHAP, was that 5% equity was a bit of a barrier to overcome. And so that's sort of that was the genesis, I guess, of this program coming into play. So yes, absolutely. The expectation is you could come to CHAP with an equity contribution from the center, and that would fill our requirements on the equity side.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a few questions also coming in through the chat. This one will be for you, Amanda, from Dion White. Is there a target timeline for processing applications through the various steps, assuming applications are complete?
Thank you, Dion. I love that you already sort of prefaced that with assuming applications are complete, because that is exactly what I was going to say. So we are targeting 2 weeks, 10 days, once we have all of the documents that we need to be able to process the application.
Okay, thank you.
There's also a follow-up question here. You said that to not add to the property portfolio if your buildings are under development. Are they okay to add if they are currently under renovation?
Yes, we would want to see that in your existing property portfolio if they are under renovation. Assuming that they have occupancy permits and they could be occupied, because that was sort of one of the caveats. And I may just clarify that with you as well, Nikki, right? That it was the occupancy permit. That's why we didn't want anything under development. So if they can currently be occupied, yes, please include them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the intention of looking at the portfolio is just to sort of see how things have been managed, and it's hard to tell how something currently under development has been managed because there's been no tenants in it. But yeah, I agree.
Further questions, one from Pauline McIntosh. In the eligibility criteria, it is mentioned that an organization has to be a registered Canadian nonprofit. If an organization is a registered nonprofit with the NS Registry of Joint Stock Companies, is this considered to be equivalent?
No, Nova Scotia joint stock. I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one last question here from Krista McNair. Would an organization who owns property used as an emergency shelter, but no other property is used for rental housing, meet the 3 years of experience requirement?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Would an organization who owns property used as an emergency shelter, but no other property is used for rental housing, meet the 3 years of experience criteria?
It's specific to rental housing, 5 units or greater of rental housing. So also dealing with residential tenancies, it's sort of encompassing all of those things that you will run into when owning and operating housing.
Great. Do we have an example of an acquisition policy that we can share or provide a little more context on what that is?
That's a fantastic question. And if it's something that would make this process easier, then we'll absolutely get something together, and get that out to you.
If there are any further questions, don't hesitate to raise your hand or pop something in the chat. I'll just take this opportunity to remind everyone that we have a follow-up webinar coming up that might be of interest to attendees here with labeled the Nova Scotia Community Housing Assessment Webinar. So that it will be in partnership with the NS-CHCF. The center is conducting an assessment of the entirety of Nova Scotia's community housing sector. The collected data will be confidential, but will be used to inform a sector-wide analysis, offering insights into trends, challenges, and opportunities for growth. The pre-event webinar is scheduled for October 8th at 4 p.m. And we will be going through our assessment tool live demo, and you can ask questions of our experts that will be on site. The full analysis will be presented during a panel discussion at the 2024 Housing Symposium in Halifax on, I believe it is November 18th. I'll pop a link in the chat if you want to register for that. I think Dion White has a question. I will ask you to unmute.
Hopefully I am unmuted. I guess the question is, are properties with existing operating agreements or that have received previous support through government programs eligible under the program?
Well, Dion, you've done a great setup for me, because I'm going to get into the property eligibility actually, and that'll be answered right there for you.
That's great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we'll move on.
There were a couple of other questions actually in the chat.
Yes.
If we have just a quick minute.
Sure.
So Morgan had asked, are there allowances for rural or remote communities that may not have many/any 5-unit buildings?
That is going to be something that I am going to say reach out and speak to the program manager, so myself, to discuss, because I know when we were looking at this program, obviously with rural, and I live rural, so I completely understand that side of things, that we'd like to have a conversation with regards to what that looks like, and work directly with Dima and with Nikki on that. So if you would reach out to me, that would be great.
Yeah, and I'll throw a plug in for myself as well. It's definitely something that we're hearing just on the CHAP side, that the abundance of 5+ units in the rural areas is not there. And so if anyone wants to reach out to me and have that conversation, it just helps me sort of build a case internally here to maybe look at what our eligibility is as well.
Excellent.
Thanks, Nikki. Milen had a question about single room occupancy units, which I think you'll touch on, Amanda, in the next part of this presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I will hand it back over to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So again, you will access the second part of this fund by going to the portal, my.center.support, clicking on grant applications. It will take you to the regular grant application screen with the list, scroll past the other grant offerings, and now look for this icon, and this is new. It will say you pre-qualified for this fund. You can now start your application. Once you click that box, you will be taken to a new eligibility quiz specific to the property. Please confirm that you have read and qualify for the following, and this will answer a number of the questions that have just come up. So again, stating the obvious that the property does need to be located in Nova Scotia, and it cannot be a new development. Properties must not be currently owned by a government entity or bound by operating agreements or reliant on operating subsidies once acquired. Once again, the capital fund is specifically for the preservation of existing affordable housing units. At least 30% of the units must be at or below average market rent, or AMR, as determined by DEMA. Existing tenants cannot be displaced, and they must contain a minimum of 5 self-contained units or private rooms, so SRO, yes, and there must be no more than 30% of commercial space. So again, for those who have applied to DEMA for CHAP, this criteria mirrors to streamline the approval and funding process. Once you've completed the eligibility quiz, you will move on to the property eligibility section. Here you will enter the property details, including proposed dates on when conditions need to be waived and the closing date. We do understand that with property purchases, these dates can change. So we are looking for the current expected timelines at this point. We then move on to the rental affordability. You will have another property information template that will open an Excel spreadsheet, and you can save that to your computer. Similar to the property portfolio that you completed in the applicant pre-qualification stage, you will see a tab on how to complete the property information. Please refer to this tab when completing the Excel spreadsheet. Also note that there are two sections here. So the first is on the building and the second is on the unit breakdown. Some of the required information for the building includes the building address, the number of stories, number of parking spaces, is there an elevator, the overall building condition, percentage of commercial space, the square footage of the building, and the average square footage of the unit based on unit type. This information should be found from the listing cut or provided to you by the current owner. Here are a couple of other tips regarding the template. The fields in beige are read-only. Fill in all of the fields. So if there are no elevators, enter a 0 if it's not applicable. Some tabs do have a drop down for you to choose an option, such as the property management section, and green fields are required. So this slide specifically is showing what will appear when information is not completed. You will see an incomplete button in 2 spots, as well as lines that remain green. This is the rental affordability complete. So you will see complete and a check mark in blue. And I suspect that this section will probably generate a number of questions, but I will remind you that until the organization has been pre-qualified, you can't access this section in the portal. So please get pre-qualified so the organization doesn't miss out on an opportunity. Finally, the rental status. We are looking for further information on the actual status of the units. This can include the lease date, the monthly rental amount. If there is commercial space, we are looking for the operating name of the organization sharing this space, and rental costs that include utilities in the rent, a breakdown of what utilities may be included. On to the market research analysis. So the center recognizes the demand for housing is province-wide. In this section, we're looking at what differentiates this property or location, whether it be its location, the demographic, or future development and or threat to the loss of affordable housing. We're looking for you to provide your specific insight into the neighborhood and the community using some of these data points. Under displacement risk, consider things such as long-term resident versus new residents to a property. Long-term residents may mean lower rents and a greater number of affordable units that can be preserved. Is there an increase in new developments and gentrification in the proposed property area? Property-specific details such as poor maintenance or bylaw concerns. And how many units will be preserved overall and at what level of sustainability? We're halfway through this criteria. So with the economic viability, what energy upgrades have recently been completed and will you need to complete? What other capital repairs will need to be done and how are you going to cover those repairs? The financial sustainability, if there are vacant units, will you rent them below AMR in their current condition, or will they be updated and rent them closer to market to ensure sustainability of other affordable units or other deeply affordable units? The property detail section, what is the proximity to schools, libraries, community services, grocery stores, and medical? How are these services accessed from a transportation perspective? And at this stage, we will also want the property listing and approved land use or zoning uploaded for review. The conditions of finance and where the excitement begins. So the center acknowledges that there are costs to providing some of the documents listed here, and they are not required to submit your property or engage with the program manager on the viability of the property. However, these documents will be required before a property approval can be made. So for those who are newer to this process, make sure this is on your radar from a cost perspective and a time allowance. Phase 1 environmental assessment, phase 2, if required, your BCA, your as-complete appraisal if major renovations will be completed, capital repair quotes if required, and your final purchase and sale agreement. And the final section is the financial and contract details. Again, for those who have worked with DEMA and used CHAP in the past, this will be very familiar to you. We have aligned the requirements of CHAP in this application. There may still be other required documentation or information needed. However, this gives you a standard outline to have ready to finalize the funding and contract requirements. And then you get to hit submit. We have created a separate section in the portal for additional information or documents that may be required. And there will be another declaration that will need to be acknowledged. We have a couple of tips and just things that we covered throughout the presentation with regards to saving, using a Word document for spell check and just to have things saved on your own computer before uploading. And if there are any other questions, I think we still have a bit of time. JF or Allison, if we have other questions on this section.
We have a question for Nikki, actually. While that she's on the call, I'll take advantage of that. How does DMHA determine AMR?
Yeah. So if anyone's used any other programs that DEMA has, some of them are federally cost shared, and so there's a bilateral agreement with CMHC, and so it's a little bit stickier with CHAP because it's a provincial program only. We do have a little bit more flexibility. The first thing that we look at is CMHC's AMR for the area in which the property is being purchased. We know that CMHC doesn't have submarket data for some areas in the province. And we know that right now we're working with October 2023 CMHC data, recognizing that there's a lead time to collect that data and that things have been changing faster than they ever have. So we recognize that. And so we'll look at CMHC. We have some good data from PVSC. We'll also look at what the appraisal considers for their rental analysis in the appraisal. So we are flexible to use what makes sense when we make that determination. If that is a little bit vague, but all to say we're open to having a conversation and coming up with what makes the most sense.
We have a question for you, Amanda. For the needs in rural communities, with data from community surveys and other non-CMHC or statistics sources can be supported. CMHC has confirmed that the data in centers greater than 10,000 is extremely limited, smaller than 10,000, pardon.
And with regards to, I think specifically on the displacement risk, even access, when we were looking at the transportation to access of services, again, I'm in New Glasgow. I understand we don't have the same services and access to transportation as you do in HRM. So providing that that backup information that you do have and engaging me throughout the process so we can understand and make an informed decision. But absolutely, we very much have rural on our radar, that the categories are definitely different than what you're going to run into in more of the urban areas. I hope that answered the question.
So two, follow-up question from Milan. Would you be willing to line up affordability to median household income for renters in the area? MLI select for a 2-bed, and then we add 10. They add 10% for each bedroom and take off 10% for each lesser bedroom. Not sure I'm reading that right.
And I'd ask you to read it again so I can understand the question.
Or Milan, if you would be so kind, maybe you can unmute.
Might be a conversation with Nikki. Just given that you have the flexibility and that it is a provincial program, sometimes maybe aligning affordability to income rather than the market might have better outcomes, particularly actually anywhere. And so if we say the MLI select measurement is 30% of median household renter income. The problem with MLI Select is that it's for any size unit. So if we were to line that up to a median household, which is 2+ people, like a 2-bedroom household, and then we fan it out, you add 10% for each additional bedroom, you take out 10% for each less bedroom down to SRO, then you might, like, we can create the table. It's an easy table to create, but you might actually have a really good way to measure affordability. And if folks want to do deeper affordability through supportive housing, that opens it up to them. But if you're trying to just do off-market affordable housing, that might be a good way to do it. And we've been working with municipalities and implementing this kind of measurement over the last few months.
Yeah, so it's a good point. And I mean, like I said, we're flexible. And so we're really open to hearing if you would like to justify that being your approach in your project. We're open to hearing that. Sometimes the challenge with existing is that you don't have a whole lot of say in what the rent levels are. And so I think the below market is, the CHAP is a tool to preserve, right? And so I think that's sort of where that came from as a benchmark. But again, we're open to hear if you want to justify your approach that way. We're open to consider it, and then we can just move on depending on what the case is and go from there.
Thank you.
I don't see any further questions, so perhaps Amanda or Allison, maybe you want to have a final go around or a final statement.
Sure, I'll start and then I'll leave it with Allison. I just wanted to reinforce that, again, if you find a property before completing and being approved for the applicant pre-qualification in stage 1, you potentially will miss out on an opportunity. So start that pre-qualification process. And yeah, I guess that's sort of my biggest piece of advice. And any questions, absolutely reach out and reach out to me directly.
I do just see one. Can 5 units also be 4 units plus a backyard suite? The answer is yes. If it's 5 legal units, then it's 5 legal units. We're fine. And I put my contact information in the chat also.
Just a quick question, because I got called into work, so I missed most of this. Is it recorded, or is there a chance to catch a replay?
It is being recorded, yes.
Beautiful, thank you.
And I think we have an 11th hour question here that we can potentially wrap up with. Is the grant amount capped at the 5% equity requirement for CHAP?
So each of the applications is going to be the grant amount will be at least the minimum of the 5% equity requirement for CHAP, but that will be between the center, which Amanda working from the center, and with Dima with Nikki. That's going to be the capital stack will be developed between those two parties looking at it, but it will be at least a minimum of the 5% equity requirement for CHAP.
I believe that covers today's session. I want to thank you all for attending. I put Amanda's contact information in the chat. As I mentioned, today's session was entirely recorded, will be uploaded just as soon as possible. All attendees registered for today will also get an email recap with updated FAQs, which will also be eventually put up on our website, probably by end of week, early next week. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.